Hello everyone. In this video, I am going to discuss the essay by Jacques Derrida, Structure, Sign and Play in the Discourse of Human Sciences. Now before I go into this video, I would request you to watch my previous video that I have made on deconstruction. In that video, I have tried to elucidate the concepts of structuralism and post-structuralism using a very simple language. Before going to this video or before studying this essay, you should have a clear knowledge of what structuralism and post-structuralism stand for. The essay by Jacques Derrida has been derived from a lecture that he has given on John Hopkins University at a conference or seminar titled The Language of Criticism and the Sciences of Man in October 1966. Now this essay has been broadly divided into three parts. The first part is about structure, center and no center. The second part is about rupture, and the third part is about the new mode of thinking. Now the Derrida didn't make any such divisions, but to understand the essay, these three divisions are important. In this essay, Derrida criticizes structure, structuralism or structural anthropology of Claude Lévi-Strauss. Structuralism observes everything as structures. Structuralism tries to observe our reality as made up of structures. For example, a poem would be a structure. The language we use would become a structure. Or the way we are tied in our family is a structure. The school is a structure. And in all these structures, there is one central point, one center that controls this structure. So I have said what is structure. Now I have to say about what is center. Center is an organizing principle that allows for limited play. Center gives the structure its structurality. For example, in a school, a principal would be at the center. It is because of the principal sitting in his chamber, the school is running smoothly. The center orients and balances the structure. And it is also the center that makes the periphery. Consider a circle. A circle will always have a center. This center makes the periphery. The center gives the idea of the circumference. The center is always holding the things inside the circle. So this is structure, and every structure has a center. This is the main idea of structuralism or structural outlook of looking at things. One interesting thing about the center is that the center is both inside and outside the structure. Take the example of a king. Whatever goes inside the kingdom, the king is unaffected by it. The king is always unaffected by the laws of the country. If the king commits any crime, the king wouldn't have any punishment. Think of God as the center of human existence, as believed by medieval scholars. Whatever goes between humans, the God is unaffected by that. Derrida moves on to his next statement. He says that the history of the concept of structure must be thought of as a series of substitutions of center for center. Substitutions of center for center. Now what does he mean by that? He tries to say that in our history, the center has always been displaced. For example, the earth was considered to be at the center of the universe. After Galileo, the sun was considered to be at the center of the universe. And then today, it is considered that we are living in a network of galaxies. So the center has always been shifted. The center is always slippery. Take another example. In the West, God has always been at the center of human existence. In the Renaissance man came at the center. Now the center has been displaced. Derrida goes on to consider the term event. He says that the event is the rethinking of the structure. In this rethinking, the center gets displaced. So the event is that when or the event occurs when Galileo tries to think in a different way and makes a statement that no, not the earth, but the sun is at the center of the universe. In this type of thinking, in these events, the center is shifted, and this shifting of the centers causes rupture. Derrida uses these words, one is center and one is rupture. The center comes from the signified, or the transcendental signified if we think in Husserl's point of view. Remember the signified of Saussure? Now, why transcendental? Husserl said that evaporate the signifier and you are left with a pure thought, a transcendental signified. Now, transcendental signified, this way of thinking is actually giving priority to contemplation that Plato had given. Plato is such a philosopher who had given importance to contemplation, to deep thinking. And Husserl is also saying the same way. So, these transcendental signifiers has made the centers. For example, one big example is God. Now, Derrida is saying that in West, the signified is always given importance. The signifier is never given importance. Now, we need to define by transcendental signified, at least for this video. Derrida says that from Plato, philosophy has searched for transcendental signified. Transcendental signified can be thought of as an external point upon which philosophy can build up. For example, God. It is an external point upon which medieval scholars had built up their philosophy. Derrida stops this type of discussion in this point in the essay and goes on to say what makes this type of thinking possible. Now, he himself raises the question and he gives the answer by himself. He says that it is because of the three most prominent philosophers and their discoveries that has made him to think, or that has made this kind of thinking possible. Those three philosophers are Nietzsche, Freud and Heidegger. Nietzsche has criticized metaphysics. Freud has criticized consciousness, and Heidegger has given definition to Dasein, or being as presence. Now, through all the history of Western philosophy, each new philosopher is trying to demolish the ideas of the older philosopher and trying to put his thinking forward. Well, in West, the philosophers has always been trying to prove the older philosopher false and give new theories to establish his own theories. Derrida tries to take philosophy to a level where this kind of scuffle between the philosophers is no more required. Now, it would be easy if I gave examples. Aristotle criticized Plato's theory of forms. Heidegger criticized Nietzsche for his metaphysical nihilism. Now, this is a general trend that has been followed. Derrida at this point chooses not to talk anymore and discuss about ethnology. Ethnology is the study of people, study of different kinds of people and the relationships between them. Now, at the time when Derrida was living, or in this time too, the proper study of an ethnologist would be to disregard the European culture as the standard culture and observe and acknowledge all the different cultures that people are having all around the world. Derrida is saying that the way in which a true ethnologist disregards, dislocates European culture from the center, in the same way Western metaphysics should be dislocated or disregarded from the center. Next, he goes on to elaborate on Claude Lévi-Strauss' structural anthropology. Claude Lévi-Strauss developed the structural anthropology, or later structuralism that derived from its way. It is the set of behaviors and ideas that people learn, and this makes a culture. Humans already have a faculty present inside them to consider what is good and what is bad. This is Strauss's idea that humans have a faculty present within himself to understand which is better for them and which is bad for them. And this is the reason why they chose or they preferred to be in culture or to be civilized rather than uncivilized. He gives an example that cooked meat is favorable to everyone instead of raw meat. Now, it is the faculty present in human brain that he or she will prefer cooked meat over uncooked meat. He gives a more interesting or more complex example of incest. Strauss is saying that it is because of the faculties present inside humans that he can understand that incest is not a good thing for the society. The relationship that develops within siblings cannot be taken to love making. Incest is generally prohibited in all cultures, and Strauss believes it is because of this man's reasoning capacity that incest has been prohibited. But Derrida here takes up a different issue. He says that the incest prohibition is also a cultural law. In every religion, there is a prohibition against incest or incest scandal. Every religion has its own set of rules to prevent incestual relationships. Derrida is saying that if the incest scandal or the prohibition against incest is naturally acquired by man and also at the same time culturally provided to man, then where should we place the incest prohibition? If incest prohibition resides in both the places, then what will happen to the structure of this structurality? Then what will happen to the structure of this culture? The structure will break down. In order to get a good grasp of the entire thing, I would ask you to watch the previous video that I have made, and there I had given a good example of zombie. Whether a zombie is living or a zombie is dead. In which way would you categorize? It is an in-between thing. So Derrida has been breaking these binaries. Strauss had made a binary between culture and nature, and Derrida is breaking these binaries one by one. At the same time, Derrida is not disregarding the structures. What structuralism does is that it attaches a truth value to a structure, and deconstruction is only trying to dismantle this. Derrida mentions Lévi-Strauss' concept of bricoleur and engineer. So this is the difference between bricoleur and engineer, or better say bricoleur versus engineer. Bricoleur is a word that came from French, and it means a craft person who will take anything available before him and make the required thing. For example, if you call a bricoleur and ask him to make a table for you, he will take all the things that is available before him and he will make a table for you. In contrast, there is the engineer. If you call an engineer and ask him to make a table, then he will arrange all his tools, he will make a scientific plan, and then will progress from his plan to completion. What an engineer will make, he will make a stable concrete object with a definite purpose and a center. So this is the difference between bricoleur and an engineer. Bricoleur stands for savage mind and engineer stands for scientific mind. So if you ask a bricoleur to make you a chair in the middle of a jungle, then he would collect the bamboos and at least make something where you can sit. If you ask an engineer to make a chair in the middle of a jungle, he will go to his workshop, bring his tools, cut down a tree, make wood out of it and make you a chair. So What an engineer does is he creates a stable, concrete object with a fixed center and purpose. But what Bricoleur does it, he doesn't care about the center and the purpose. So, Strauss uses this metaphor of Bricoleur to describe the myth making in society, and he uses this concept of or metaphor of engineer to describe the science in a society. Myths usually collect the leftovers of the previous cultural formation and engage it in new combinations. This is the way that myth travels and myth functions. Derrida is trying to break this binary between myth and science. Derrida is saying that whether it be myth, whether it be the bricolier or the engineer, everyone borrows from the previous generation. A scientist would always cite the previous scientist. A mythology always refers to previous mythologies. So there is a bit of bricolier in every scientist. There is a bit of scientist in every bricolier. Or scientist is the myth of bricolier. Or sorry, I'm saying scientist. It's engineer. Engineer is the myth of bricolier. So Derrida asks us to ask philosophers to work as a bricolier, or the working of the new philosopher with this new mode of thinking will be just like a bricolier who will not consider any central point, who will not consider any structure, but who will allow the free play of meanings. If we go in this way, or if this new mode of thinking is further developed, then we will be able to have a philosophy without concepts. Now, the total concept of deconstruction is not clear from this essay. In order to get a good grasp of what deconstruction is, I ask you to watch my video, the first video that I have made on deconstruction. And then you can return back to this video and find what you understand from this video. Thank you.